All right, so you came up with a wonderful idea and wrote your business plan, and now it's time to take the next step and start operating. Now, there are several things that you can and cannot do in order to start operating, and I want to tell you all your options here. You have this great business idea and you know it's going to be a success because we won't move forward if we haven't really done the due diligence. And even when you start, and even if you fail, it doesn't matter, because that failure is a learning experience that's going to get you closer to your ultimate goal. So keep going. Now, back to the video. So you can operate as a sole proprietorship. And what that means is you'll operate under your name. You can operate as Alex Jones doing whatever it is that you're doing. Some things that you have to watch out for though. If you're going to a business where you need a license or need to make sure that certain regulatory obligations are met, make sure to do that, because you also don't want to get yourself in hot water. But if you're just selling widgets online, aside from maybe applying for sales taxes, then you may not have licenses to apply for. So you can go ahead, smooth sailing from here. Some benefits and drawbacks here. Well, you're not really operating under any kind of entity structure. So from certain perspectives, there's unlimited liability. There's nothing to protect you from that. You have not much of a choice of being taxed as certain entities, such as an S corporation, which could ultimately save you a ton in taxes. And in order to do that, what I mostly recommend to my clients from a tax perspective is to structure as an LLC from the onset. And the reason being is because the LLC itself is one of the most flexible entity structures that they have today, because you can take that LLC as you're starting up your business and operate as a single member LLC, assuming you have no partners, and that would just flow through straight to you on a Schedule C on your personal tax return, really reducing the complication of additional tax filings, meaning an additional tax return does not have to be filed. And you can just go ahead and operate as that sole prop until you're ready to change entities, whether it's to an S corporation, to a C corporation, or if you're bringing on additional investors or partners, if you will also turn into a LLC, taxed as a partnership, which is a 1065 filing. But again, the reason why I really love that LLC structure is because it gives you that amazing flexibility. Let's talk about whether you have one or two owners of that entity. Let's say Alex Jones does have a friend that he's going into business with, and you do start as an LLC. That's still a simplified entity structure, but now that's still a more simplified entity structure, meaning it's not really a corporation. There aren't shares that you have to worry about, but you still own that entity as an LLC with ownership of membership units. You, Alex Jones, and your buddy will own a certain amount of that entity based on your agreement. Emphasizing why I like that LLC structure so much is because you can actually have a choice of splitting the profits, the losses, and the capital of the business when you're operating as an LLC, taxed as a partnership, which is something that you cannot do in an S corporation or a C corporation. If Alex Jones, you're the brains of the operation and you had this great idea and you started the legwork, and then you realized, you know what, I can't do this on my own, I need capital. So what you did is you reached out to your buddy, Steve Smith, and you said, Steve, I have this great idea. You want to come into this business with me? And Steve says, you know, Alex, I've known you for a bunch of years. I know you have a great work ethic, and I really love this idea that you have. I'd love to invest into your business, and I will give you $500,000 to get you off the ground and get all the inventory that you need to sell those widgets online, because it's a unique product and I don't think many people are doing it right now. Alex, you're thrilled. But the agreement that you can make in an LLC is that Steven is going to come into this business and get a certain share of the profits and losses and a different share of capital. You can say, all right, he's putting up the money and you're doing all the work, so you guys are going to split the profit and losses 50-50. So whatever happens, it's split 50-50. But Steven over here says, I put up a lot of that capital. I put up $500,000. You really put up zero. What we're going to do here, we can decide and revisit this later on. What I'd like is 90% of that capital allocation in that business, maybe even 95, because all of my money is invested in here. And if something happens with the inventory and it becomes stale or whatever the case is, we'll have to do a forced sale and I want some of my money back. Considering you didn't put anything into it, I think that's only fair. So you have that flexibility to split up profits, losses, and capital. You can even split up profits and losses differently as well, depending on the agreement itself. In a 50-50 partnership, that's not as common, but when we deal with larger real estate investors, a little more complicated structures, then we start divvying it up a little more in depth. How is this different from an S corporation or a C corporation? An S corporation operates very similarly in the sense that it's a flow flow through, meaning it also passes through to the partners or shareholders rather. The income passes through to the shareholders. However, in an S corporation itself, there's only one level of shareholder ownership. You can't have preferred and non-preferred owners. You can't have the income, losses, and capital split differently amongst the shareholders. It's all based on your ownership percentage. If Steve Smith and Alan Jones own 50-50 of this entity, then that's what it's going to be. They're going to split profits, losses, and capital based on 50-50 ownership. With C corporations, we don't see them as often with smaller companies. We see them more often when we're looking at startups that are looking to raise capital through angel investors or through investors in general and potentially want to go public later down the road. For a small operation where you have Alex Jones and Steve Smith operating, we're really going to stick to the most common entity structures, which are either an S corporation or an LLC taxed as a partnership. The partnership itself is also less common purely because of the liability protection that LLCs do have. You have limited liability for all the LLC owners or members, as we like to say. And there's also a level of anonymity that we can actually bring in when we're operating with an LLC and a corporation itself, whereas you won't get that level of anonymity when you're dealing with a sole proprietorship, because after all, as a sole prop, you're operating as yourself. Here I am, Alex Jones. If you're operating an LLC, even if it's a single member LLC, meaning you're the only owner, at the end of the day, you can call it anything you'd like. You can call it High-Rise Enterprises, and you can form the entity in a different state for anonymity purposes. You're ultimately gonna register in the state where you're operating because you can't avoid that tax because you have Nexus, but there are ways to actually form that LLC where there's complete anonymity. Why would you want anonymity? In case, God forbid, something happens and somebody's trying to go after your assets, it'll take them a lot longer to find who you are if you have the right structures in place and they don't know who you are at all. If you're starting a business, I'd also like to emphasize to make sure to have a consultation with somebody who really understands how things operate, so there are no surprises as you begin. A lot of times we speak to prospects that just didn't know that they really needed a license to do what they're actually doing. Sometimes it's just a matter of time before the actual taxing authorities or the licensing authorities come to you and say, hey, you've been doing this and you really can't without a license, and then penalties and interest come into play. So take some time, schedule a consult with a competent attorney or an accountant that can really help you get your feet on the ground, hit the ground running, and run that amazingly successful business that you have your heart set and become your own boss. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you have any questions, comment below. I'd love to field any questions that you have. And if you have ideas that you want me to talk about, please share. I read all the comments myself personally. And if you found any value in this video, just a quick ask, please share this with your friends, blast it on social media. I'd love to be able to help more people and produce more for you. So thanks again for watching. Like, follow, and share for more tips.